don't get caught. Psalm 34. Divine prayer instantly protects and brings unshakable peace. Are you caught in life's chaos? Here's how Psalm 34 can rescue you. When life feels like it's closing in, when the weight of uncertainty, fear, and doubt press down on your soul, what do you turn to? Imagine facing a moment where everything feels out of control, or maybe you're already there. The pressures mount, the silence is deafening, and escape feels impossible. Did you know there's a divine lifeline waiting for you, one that has stood the test of time for centuries? Psalm 34 holds the answers you didn't even realize you were searching for, offering a shield of protection when you feel trapped and a light of unshakable peace in the darkest places. Just for a moment, think about this. What if you could tap into that peace instantly, finding refuge from everything that's hunting your spirit: fear, anxiety, doubt? This psalm isn't just poetry. It's a spiritual rescue mission, written by someone who, like us, found himself on the run. Today, Psalm 34 is as relevant as ever, designed not just to inspire, but to protect, comfort, and guide you when the traps are set and the storms rage. Stick with me as we uncover the protective power of these timeless words and unlock their transformative promise. What happens when you seek God in prayer? What's the secret to unshakable peace even in life's chaos? These aren't just questions, they're the answers waiting to change everything. If you're ready for immediate clarity, protection, and strength, you've come to the right place. Psalm 34 isn't just a chapter in the Bible. It's a divine strategy to regain control over what feels unbearable. Stay tuned, because by the end of this, you'll have not only the tools, but the faith to face any storm with confidence. This is your moment to escape the chaos. Let's dive in together. Unfold the drama, the crisis of life's traps. Life doesn't strike with mercy, it confronts you, unrelenting and unforgiving. The traps it sets are everywhere, often hidden in plain sight. You wake up feeling the weight of expectations, the fear of failing someone, or maybe even yourself. These traps come in countless forms, some so deeply embedded in your daily routine that they're nearly invisible. It could be the stress of trying to measure up to an impossible standard, the haunting questions of what if I'm not enough, or what if I fail again. Maybe it's the relentless comparison to others. Their success is magnified while your own struggles feel insurmountable. Life doesn't just challenge you, it ensnares you in thoughts and emotions that seem impossible to escape. But these traps don't just exist externally, they thrive within us. The silent tug of doubt that whispers lies, the restlessness that keeps you awake at night, and the feeling of being trapped in cycles you can't seem to break. All these things take root in the mind, in the spirit. They work invisibly, but their effects are crushing and suffocating. You think, how did I get here? Why can't I free myself from the constant noise in my head? And yet, the harder you push to escape, the tighter the grip becomes. That's exactly what these mental and spiritual traps are designed to do. They lure you in, feed your fears, and thrive on your isolation. We live in a world designed to amplify these traps. Everything seems urgent. Every demand feels like it holds the weight of your value. Social media, endless to-do lists, the pressures of relationships or careers all weave an invisible web. And in this web, it's easy to feel small, forgotten, even abandoned. You might cry out internally, what's the way out of this? How do I escape what feels so overwhelming, so constant? Those living with these fears often ask themselves whether anyone has ever truly felt what they're feeling, that bound, that paralyzed. And the truth is, many have. Perhaps more than you realize. Even in ancient times, these traps existed. King David himself knew them intimately. Psalm 34 was born from his own experience of feeling like the walls were closing in, from his own brush with danger, fear, and despair. He wasn't a man shielded from trouble. He was a man who lived amid chaos. Yet in the middle of his trials, he uncovered something extraordinary. It wasn't just survival. David found a lifeline, a refuge, a way to walk through the depth of his struggles without allowing them to destroy him. He discovered a divine rescue, a protection so powerful that no trap could hold him captive for long. His words echo across centuries, offering us the same hope, the same way out. When you read Psalm 34, the text almost seems to plead with us to see how God's protection works. With each verse, it paints a vivid contrast between the traps of fear and the freedom that faith brings. The angel of the Lord encamps around those who fear him, and he delivers them, David wrote, declaring a truth that stands firm even today. These are not wishful words or poetic symbolism. This is a promise. A divine presence stands between you and the forces that seek to ensnare you. It creates a shield that defends not just your soul, but your sanity. The traps lose their grip when confronted with divine truth. And here's what's most striking about Psalm 34. It doesn't pretend the traps don't exist. It acknowledges the hardship, the fear, the setbacks. But it also points to something greater. The escape is real, the rescue is available, and it comes not through your own strength, but through divine intervention. Sometimes you find yourself running out of answers, out of steps forward. That's the moment when the trap feels the strongest, when you're most tempted to believe the lie that there's no way out. But David's testimony and the promise of this psalm tells a different story. The truth is, the traps aren't stronger than the shield of God's presence. But the shield is only given when you seek it, when you call out in prayer as David did. I sought the Lord, and he answered me. He delivered me from all my fears. These aren't empty words, they hold the weight of divine power. It begins with surrender, with laying down your struggles and reaching for something greater. God doesn't ignore your cries. He moves toward them, responding with clarity, with rescue, with peace. So now the question falls to you. The crisis may feel overwhelming, the traps might feel insurmountable, but have you truly sought the shield offered to you? Have you cried out in trust to the one who has never broken his promise? What follows in this journey will give you the tools to use this shield effectively, to find your way through life's traps with confidence and hope. You're not just listening to words, you're being invited onto a lifeline, one designed to guide you out of the chaos. Introducing Psalm 34, the life-saving prayer. There's a moment when the noise of life becomes too loud, and you can feel it in your chest, the weight, the tension, the helplessness. It's in these moments you wonder if there's a place to turn, a way to quiet the chaos. This is where Psalm 34 steps in, not as just another passage of scripture, not as a collection of distant words, but as a direct, immediate rescue. Psalm 34 isn't merely read, it's a refuge, a lifeline, a declaration of God's power to step into the hardest moments of your life and deliver peace. To truly grasp the weight of these words, you have to understand where they came from and why they remain as relevant today as they were when they were first written. Psalm 34 was born out of King David's personal struggle, a moment in his life marked by fear and desperation. David wasn't sitting in safety when these words flowed from his heart. He wasn't basking in comfort and triumph. He was fleeing for his life, a man on the run, hunted by King Saul, surrounded by enemies, disguising himself to survive. It was in a moment of utter vulnerability and danger that this psalm took shape, not as a cry of despair, but as a proclamation of hope, trust, and divine deliverance. David didn't just read about fear. He lived and walked through it. Yet through it all, he discovered something powerful. God's protection is real, immediate, and unshakable. The opening words of the psalm already carry the weight of David's experience. I will bless the Lord at all times. His praise shall continually be in my mouth. Notice the tone here. Despite everything David endured, his focus is unyielding. Not on the danger, not on the uncertainty, but on God's faithfulness. It's a reminder that even in your most terrifying moments, your response matters. Your decision to turn to faith, to open your heart in praise, sends a signal that God's light is stronger than any darkness. As you navigate further into the psalm, a theme of divine rescue begins to emerge, echoing across the verses. I sought the Lord, and he answered me. He delivered me from all my fears. The words I sought carry profound weight because they are both an act of surrender and trust. David wasn't fighting his battles alone. He didn't rely on his own strength or cunning to escape these moments. He sought God. He turned his fears into prayers, and in return, God moved. This is critical because it directly answers a question we all face: what can I do when life becomes too much? Psalm 34 gives you the map. Seek God first. Look to him not just in emergencies, but in every situation, knowing that deliverance isn't just a possibility, it's a promise. Then comes another powerful truth, one that rewrites the narrative of fear and shame. Those who look to him are radiant. Their faces are never covered with shame. Fear has a way of not only paralyzing us, but distorting how we see ourselves. It clouds our confidence, keeps us from moving forward, and leaves us questioning our worth. Yet Psalm 34 unveils a divine reality. When you turn to God, something begins to shift. Your spirit becomes radiant, not just free from fear, but luminous with peace, joy, and purpose. The shame that once defined your struggles is replaced by the confidence that comes from standing in the presence of God. In the middle of Psalm 34 lies a verse that feels almost like an anchor in a storm. The angel of the Lord encamps around those who fear him, and he delivers them. Take a moment to absorb that image. It doesn't say the angel of the Lord passes through or briefly visits. No, he encamps. This means you aren't just offered momentary relief. You're surrounded, enveloped by God's constant, ongoing presence. It's a reassurance that even when life feels like it's unraveling, you're not standing alone. There is divine protection, a shield that guards you from every trap the enemy sets, every fear that threatens to consume you. What makes this psalm so unique and powerful, even thousands of years later, is the way it bridges the distance between the divine and the personal. It's not about distant theology or abstract concepts. It's about a God who moves when you call, who answers when you pray, who rescues when you feel caught. This poor man called, and the Lord heard him. He saved him out of all his troubles. David's testimony becomes ours, proof that God doesn't just hear prayers, he acts upon them. Psalm 34 isn't just a theological statement, it's a call to action. These verses challenge you to not only reflect on their truth, but to put them into practice. When fear takes hold, do you seek God? When life feels overwhelming, do you cry out in trust rather than despair? These words aren't meant to be passively read. They're meant to ignite faith, to stir your spirit to move closer to the one who rescues. As we journey through the richness of this psalm, the question grows louder. How much of the peace and protection God promises are you leaving untapped? What would it look like to fully embrace the truth of these verses and live as if you were guarded not by your own efforts, but by the God who has never failed to rescue his people? Psalm 34 isn't just about survival. It's about thriving in the confidence of a deliverance that only God can provide. Stay with me, because the steps to fully living this promise are just ahead. The divine shield, God's promise of protection. There is a longing within every human heart for protection, particularly when life feels as though it is closing in, when everything seems chaotic, when circumstances seem determined to overwhelm. The cry is simple and universal: am I safe? It's a question whispered amidst anxiety, a plea uttered in silence during moments of despair, when life's pressures threaten to breach the walls of your inner peace. The truth is, no matter how much we try to build our own sense of safety through careers, relationships, or financial security, there are moments when our defenses fail. Psalm 34 answers this primal need for protection with a divine assurance that surpasses anything this world can provide. The angel of the Lord encamps around those who fear him, and he delivers them. These words are not a metaphor. They aren't wishful thinking. They are the declared reality of what it means to seek God's presence. Imagine, for a moment, the sheer power in this promise. The angel of the Lord doesn't merely visit or move through. He encamps, he stays. Around you, above you, before you, behind you, there is divine presence. Protection isn't a fleeting moment of grace, it is ongoing and constant. God's presence surrounds those who place their trust in him, forming an impenetrable shield that no fear, no enemy, no spiritual attack can penetrate. But this protection requires something from you. It requires a posture of trust, a heart that fears the Lord. But let's clarify what fear means here. It's not the fear of dread or punishment. It's reverent awe, deep respect, and a submission born out of recognizing God's sovereignty and goodness. When your heart responds to God with this type of surrender, he responds by commanding his heavenly armies to surround you. This isn't just divine intervention. It's divine protection that touches every aspect of your being: physical, emotional, and spiritual. Yet, it's often hard to believe we are protected when the chaos of life seems relentless. Voices of doubt creep in, whispering, if God protects, then why am I still struggling? Why do I still feel trapped? Psalm 34 answers that question by shifting your perspective. The promise of protection doesn't mean the absence of trouble, but the assurance of deliverance. The psalm makes it clear that God doesn't promise an easy life void of challenges. Instead, he promises to walk with you through those challenges, to guard you so completely that even in the depths of adversity, you are not destroyed. Fear may threaten you, but it cannot rule you. Doubt may try to linger, but it cannot consume you. Pain may touch you, but it will not break you. The key lies in trust. David, the author of this psalm, knew this well. His circumstances were undeniably perilous. He didn't write Psalm 34 from a palace of comfort, but from a place of desperation, having fled his enemies and disguised himself just to survive. Yet, in his greatest vulnerability, he found peace in an unshakable truth: God's presence is enough. The protection of God was not tied to David's ability to escape, but to God's ability to deliver. That same promise extends to you. Look at the wisdom wrapped in the Psalm's language. The righteous person may have many troubles, but the Lord delivers him from them all. Here, righteous doesn't mean perfect. It means someone who seeks God, whose life and trust are directed toward him. Troubles may be many, but the deliverance is greater. This is not just about a single moment of rescue, but ongoing intervention. Every fear, every attack, every voice of doubt or hopelessness, none of them stand a chance against the protective power of God. By placing yourself under God's shield, you not only find safety, but you also find peace. And peace, in the biblical sense, isn't just the absence of conflict. It's the presence of wholeness. When you know the angel of the Lord encamps around you, you walk differently in life. You breathe differently. You no longer carry the need to fight every battle alone because you know you are never outnumbered, never abandoned. This type of peace doesn't just touch your spirit, it rewires your mind. Fear may try to invade your thoughts, but it can't take root where God's promises dwell. This divine shield changes how you react to life's challenges. You're no longer thrown into panic or despair because you understand that the battle is not yours alone. You're walking through life with forces far greater than what is threatening you. God's presence enables you to move through life with confidence, not because you control the outcomes, but because He does. And there is no power, no threat, no trap greater than Him. Fear thrives in a heart that feels alone and vulnerable. Psalm 34 annihilates that fear by declaring you are neither. You are seen, you are surrounded, you are delivered. The traps life sets for your spirit are powerless against the God who shields you, but only if you lean into His protection, letting faith take the place of fear and trust take the place of doubt. The shield is there. Will you step into it? What comes next in this journey will uncover how prayer and gratitude amplify this protection, transforming your fear into the lasting peace your heart longs for. Stay with me, you're about to discover how to unlock this promise fully and live it daily. The power of prayer and gratitude. When life shakes you to your core, when fear and doubt whisper that there's no way out, what do? Most people scramble, looking for control, trying to build their own walls of safety, only to discover they crumble under pressure. But Psalm 34 gives you an eternal key to breaking free from the grip of fear and stepping into God's protection. It lies in prayer and gratitude, two interconnected acts that can change not just your circumstances, but the state of your heart and mind. Prayer is the ultimate declaration of trust. When you pray, you admit that your abilities alone are not enough, and you invite the Creator of the universe to step into your situation. Think about the simplicity yet power of this act. David wrote, "I sought the Lord, and He answered me. He delivered me from all my fears." The act of seeking isn't passive, it's intentional. It's not a last-ditch effort, but a deliberate act of surrender. David wasn't simply reciting empty words in Psalm 34. He cried out from the depths of despair, from circumstances that left him surrounded by enemies and danger. His prayer wasn't polished, it was raw and real. And that is the power of prayer. It doesn't require perfection, only authenticity. But prayer does more than call down God's intervention. It reshapes your spirit. Every time you pray, you shift the focus. Instead of magnifying your fear, you magnify God. Instead of dwelling on the impossibility of your situation, you remind yourself of the endless possibility in His presence. Prayer isn't wishful thinking. It's the act of putting your greatest needs in the hands of the one most capable of handling them. It's where hope begins, because it moves your perspective, from fear to faith, from chaos to clarity, from self-reliance to divine dependence. The emotional and even physical impact of prayer is undeniable. You've heard the phrases, "release it in prayer," or "let go and let God." They're not just spiritual catchphrases, they're rooted in profound truth. When you truly engage in prayer, your mind begins to calm. Your body starts releasing the tension that's built up from carrying burdens too heavy for you. Modern science even echoes the power of prayer, showing that people who regularly deepen their connection with God through prayer experience lower levels of stress and higher levels of emotional well-being. It's no coincidence God designed prayer as a lifeline, one that doesn't just bring you closer to Him, but restores balance to your heart and mind. And then there's gratitude, a companion to prayer that amplifies its power. Psalm 34 doesn't just call for cries of help. It calls for celebration. Taste and see that the Lord is good. Blessed is the one who takes refuge in Him. These words are an invitation not just to pray, but to cultivate gratitude, even before you see the full answers to your prayers. Gratitude shifts your soul into alignment with God's promises. When you thank Him, whether for blessings already received or blessings still unseen, you step into a deeper level of trust. You're not just saying, "God, help me." You're declaring, "God, I know you've already got this." Gratitude rewires how you see your circumstances. It doesn't ignore pain or struggle, but it reframes them in the light of God's goodness. When David reflects on his deliverance, the gratitude woven through every word of this psalm is undeniable. He praises God not just for what He's done, but for who He is. This is the heart of thanksgiving. It lifts your gaze from the what-ifs of your life to the certainty of God's character. It reminds you that no matter what you face, God's presence, protection, and provision are unchanging. There's also a remarkable link between gratitude and your mind's chemistry. Modern studies have shown that a grateful heart releases neurotransmitters, like serotonin and dopamine, the chemicals responsible for happiness and emotional stability. While stress produces a flood of cortisol, gratitude acts like a counterbalance, quieting the chaos inside of you. So when the psalm says, "Taste and see that the Lord is good," it's not just offering a spiritual truth. It's calling you to experience the tangible transformation that comes when gratitude takes root in your life. The combined power of prayer and gratitude isn't just theoretical. It can't remain theoretical. These are tools God has given His people for navigating life's hardships, for finding peace when fear threatens to overwhelm. It's no surprise that David's words echo with both urgency and joy. What he discovered wasn't just a temporary solution, it was a sustained way of living. Pray with trust. Give thanks with expectancy. That's the rhythm of faith that shields you. So, how do you put this into practice? It begins in the simplest way. Speak it. Pray even when you're not sure how. Even when all you can say is, "Lord, help me." Authenticity matters far more than eloquence in God's eyes. Then, anchor your prayers in gratitude. Thank God for the ways He's moved in the past, for the promises He's set before you, even when you can't fully see them yet. Replace fear with thanksgiving. Where anxiety whispers doubt, prayer and gratitude declare truth. Prayer is your declaration of trust. Gratitude is your declaration of victory. Together, they form a shield of faith that fear cannot penetrate. The question is, are you willing to take this step? To stop allowing fear to dictate your thoughts and instead let faith and gratitude take over? Because what follows is even greater unshakable peace, the kind that anchors your soul in a way nothing else can. Stay with me, because next, we'll dive into the very essence of that peace and how you can experience it no matter what storm surrounds you. Unshakable peace, anchoring your soul in troubled times. Peace. It's the one thing we all long for, but it seems the hardest to grasp when life feels uncertain, chaotic, or overwhelming. What makes this search for peace even harder is realizing how temporary the world's solutions often are. A moment of distraction, an escape, or even material success may calm the storm for an hour, a day, or a season, but eventually the waves crash again. True, lasting peace, the kind that holds steady even when the world around you crumbles, can't be manufactured by human effort. It must come from something greater, something unshakable. Psalm 34 doesn't just promise peace, it teaches us how to anchor our souls in a divine source of peace that nothing can take away. David, the author of Psalm 34, knew the storms of life intimately. His journey wasn't one of luxury or ease. He wrote these words as a man surrounded by danger, his life threatened, his future uncertain. But even then, in the midst of chaos, he wasn't consumed by fear because his peace didn't come from having control over his circumstances. It came from trusting the one who controlled them. This is why his opening declaration is not a plea for help, but a proclamation of worship. I will bless the Lord at all times. His praise shall continually be in my mouth. David's peace wasn't rooted in his safety or security. It was planted firmly in God's presence. What's striking about Psalm 34 is how it describes peace not as the absence of trouble, but as a spiritual posture that defeats fear. I sought the Lord, and he answered me. He delivered me from all my fears. The key here lies in the relationship between seeking and receiving. David didn't wait for peace to magically arrive, nor did he depend on his conditions to settle. He actively sought the Lord, pursuing God's presence with desperation and trust. And what was his reward? Not just temporary relief, but deliverance from the very fears that threatened to overwhelm him. This deliverance wasn't accidental or passive, it's the natural outcome of drawing closer to God. When his presence fills the room of your heart, fear is forced to leave. Peace is not the absence of hardship, it is the presence of God's assurance, the confidence that no matter what surrounds you, you're safe in his care. Psalm 34 reminds us that God's peace is proactive. His angels encamp around those who revere him. This image is powerful: angels surrounding you like an unbreakable defense, forming a spiritual fortress that nothing can penetrate. This protection is what allows peace to flourish, even in the darkest conditions. Today, science confirms what faith has taught for centuries. Peace isn't just a state of mind. It's a state of being that affects your entire body. Fear and anxiety flood us with stress hormones like cortisol, chaining us to a cycle of worry. But peace, real peace, calms your system, lowers stress, and restores balance. That's why the psalmist poetically declares, "Taste and see that the Lord is good," inviting you not only to intellectually understand God's peace, but to personally experience its transformative power. It's an invitation to let go of worry and anchor yourself in the truth of his promises. The peace described in Psalm 34 also offers clarity. Fear clouds your judgment. It makes you reactive, uncertain, and defensive. But the peace of God steadies you, giving you the ability to think clearly and act wisely. This is why David says, "Those who look to him are radiant. Their faces are never covered with shame." The peace of God doesn't just remove fear, it replaces it with hope, radiating from the inside out. When you anchor your soul in the unchanging faithfulness of God, the storms can rage around you, but they cannot touch who you are. Experiencing unshakable peace, however, requires letting go of the illusion of control. Many people miss this step. They try to find peace on their own terms, holding on to their fears while half-heartedly praying for comfort. But Psalm 34 calls for something different. It calls for surrender. Seeking the Lord doesn't mean asking him to fix one problem or calm one moment of fear. It means placing your life, your worries, and your uncertainties fully into his hands. It means trusting him with more than your prayers. It's trusting him with your heart. The beauty of this peace is that it's not reserved for perfect people or flawless faith. David himself writes, "This poor man called, and the Lord heard him." He saved him out of all his troubles. The poor man isn't just David. It's every person who cries out to God in vulnerability, admitting their need for something greater. That's all it takes. Peace isn't earned. It's granted to those who aren't afraid to admit their need for it and to trust the one source that can truly provide it. So how do you draw this peace into your life right now? You start by trading fear for faith, worry for trust, and control for surrender. Begin by seeking Him as David did, sincerely, openly, fully. Stop focusing on the chaos and start focusing on the promises of God. Read this psalm aloud, declare its truth over your life, and let the words take root in your mind. Taste and see. Let prayer be your anchor. Let gratitude be your shield against anxiety. And most importantly, let God encamp around your life, guarding your heart and mind in ways nothing else can. What comes next is even more powerful. We'll uncover the hidden gems and overlooked treasures in Psalm 34 that most people miss, but which hold the key to unlocking even deeper spiritual resilience. Stay with me, there's so much still waiting to be revealed. A fresh perspective, unveiling hidden lessons in Psalm 34. Most people read Psalm 34 and stop at the surface. They see it as a collection of comforting verses, a declaration of God's protection and His ability to deliver us from fear. And while those truths are undeniably powerful, this psalm goes much deeper. There are layers of wisdom often missed, insights that can transform not only how you pray, but how you live. These are the hidden lessons in Psalm 34 that you may have never noticed, the elements that breathe new life into old words and shine a light on your deepest spiritual questions. At its core, David's words in Psalm 34 reveal a journey of humility, reliance on God, and community. It's easy to assume this psalm is about individual deliverance, about one person's cry for help and God's personal response. But woven into these verses is the undeniable theme of shared faith, the power of experiencing God's goodness, not in isolation, but together. Oh, magnify the Lord with me, and let us exalt His name together. That phrase is not just an invitation, it's a declaration of unity. David doesn't just call on his audience to listen to his testimony, he pulls them into the act of worship itself. There's immense power in collective worship, in gathering as a community before God, where fear begins to fade and courage rises. In modern life, isolation is one of our greatest enemies. But Psalm 34 reminds us, peace and deliverance are multiplied when sought in fellowship with others who share your faith. Another often overlooked principle is the concept of humility that pulses through every verse. This poor man cried, and the Lord heard him. In our culture, there's an almost relentless push towards self-sufficiency, the belief that strength means never admitting you need help. But Psalm 34 flips this notion entirely. David doesn't boast of his position as king. He identifies himself as a poor man in need of divine rescue. And why is humility so crucial? Because God responds to it. The Lord is near to the brokenhearted and saves the crushed in spirit. It's in brokenness, in surrender, that God's power fully shows itself. Think about that for a moment. How often do we fight to hold everything together, thinking that admitting our weakness disqualifies us from receiving God's grace? Psalm 34 teaches the exact opposite. Your vulnerability is the doorway to His power. The beauty in this truth is staggering. God isn't waiting for you to figure it out on your own. He's waiting for you to cry out to Him like David did, not with pride, but with complete dependence. Another hidden gem in Psalm 34 lies in the way it reframes our relationship with fear. The psalm acknowledges fear, Yet it turns that fear outward, not toward life's circumstances, but toward God Himself. Oh, fear the Lord, you, His saints. At first glance, this call to fear God might seem unsettling or contradictory. But this isn't fear in the traditional sense, it's awe, reverence, and a recognition of His majesty and power. Why is this shift so important? Because when you fear God, you won't fear anything else. Think of it like this. If your heart is in awe of the Creator who holds the universe, what can possibly threaten you? Fear of the Lord isn't about being terrified. It's about setting Him as the highest priority in your life. And when you do this, every other fear pales in comparison and loses its grip completely. Another underappreciated lesson in this psalm speaks directly to contentment. The young lions suffer want and hunger, but those who seek the Lord lack no good thing. It's easy to rush past these words and assume they're simply about provision. But there's something deeper here. Lions, as symbols of strength, represent those who rely solely on their own ability to survive. Despite their strength, they still suffer want. But those who seek the Lord, those who humbly depend on Him, don't just survive. They are abundantly provided for. David is pointing to a truth that runs counter to everything modern culture teaches. Striving does not equal fulfillment. True contentment is found in seeking God, resting in His sufficiency, and trusting in His provision. Perhaps the most surprising lesson in Psalm 34 is how it portrays suffering. The psalm makes no attempt to sugarcoat the realities of life. David's honesty is striking. Many are the afflictions of the righteous, but the Lord delivers him out of them all. Affliction is not dismissed, nor is righteousness presented as a shield against adversity. Instead, we're shown that deliverance doesn't mean the absence of struggle, it means God's presence in the middle of it. This is critical because it shapes how we view hardships in our own lives. Faith doesn't promise you the elimination of hardship, only that you won't face it alone. God enters your pain, stands beside you, and leads you through it, delivering you in ways far greater than what you imagine. Finally, Psalm 34 exposes the transformative power of perspective. Come, O children, listen to me. I will teach you the fear of the Lord. This is an invitation to learn, to reshape the way you understand God and your life's circumstances. David is not offering quick fixes or shallow reassurances. He's inviting you into a deeper understanding, a shift in mindset that redefines your relationship with fear, humility, suffering, and contentment. It's not just a psalm for survival, it's a blueprint for spiritual resilience. What does all this mean for you? It means stepping beyond the surface of the psalm and letting its deeper truths take root in your heart. It means embracing humility as a strength, seeking fellowship in your faith, rethinking what it means to fear the Lord, and trusting that even in affliction, God's deliverance is sure. These hidden lessons are the key to unlocking the fullness of what Psalm 34 offers, and this is just the beginning. Next, we'll take everything we've uncovered so far and put it into action. Psalm 34 isn't just a text to reflect on, it's a guide for living. Together, let's explore how these lessons translate into bold, practical strategies for walking in freedom, peace, and unshakable confidence, no matter what life throws your way. Break-free strategies to escape life's traps. The words of Psalm 34 don't just offer reassurance, they guide you toward a way of living that breaks the cycles of fear, doubt, and despair holding you back. It isn't enough to cling to these truths momentarily. If you truly want to escape the traps life so often sets, fear of failure, anxiety about the future, the endless chase for control, then you must turn Psalm 34 into more than a comforting scripture. It must become a blueprint for action, a daily strategy that anchors your mind, heart, and spirit in God's promises. Living in freedom requires intentionality. It's not about waiting for deliverance. It's about actively stepping into it. The first step is learning where to place your focus. David writes, "I will bless the Lord at all times. His praise shall continually be in my mouth." Focus is powerful. If you allow fear and stress to take root in your thoughts, they will dominate you. Every trap in life begins in the mind. It gains power when you dwell on it, when you allow it to dictate your vision of the future. But the act of blessing God, praising Him in all circumstances, flips the script. Praise shifts your attention. It doesn't deny the hardship or the traps surrounding your life, but it reminds you that God is greater than them. Do this intentionally. When fear begins to creep in, refuse to engage it. Instead, speak words of praise, declaring God's faithfulness. Say it out loud. "Lord, I bless you for being my protector, my refuge, my deliverer." By opening your mouth in gratitude and worship, you disrupt the power those darker thoughts have over you. When God's promises fill your heart and mind, there's no room left for fear to operate. Next, you must understand the power of seeking. This is the cornerstone of Psalm 34's message. "I sought the Lord, and He answered me. He delivered me from all my fears." Seeking God isn't passive, it is a conscious, relentless choice to turn your focus away from yourself and toward Him. When David sought the Lord, it wasn't simply about asking for deliverance. It was about pursuing a deeper connection. Seeking God through prayer means coming Him in vulnerability, acknowledging that you can't escape these traps on your own. But don't stop there. Seeking also involves dwelling in God's Word, not just when it's convenient, but daily. Meditate on Psalm 34 as a practice. Make it a habit to start your day by reading its verses aloud, grounding yourself in the truth of God's promises before the challenges of the day have a chance to overwhelm you. Seeking is the active resistance against those traps that try to pull your heart away. Another practical strategy is to cultivate a habit of gratitude. Gratitude doesn't come naturally when you feel weighed down by life's traps, but it is the most powerful antidote to fear. Psalm 34 challenges us with the words, "Taste and see that the Lord is good." Gratitude is how we taste His goodness. Begin by identifying even the smallest blessings in your life: your health, a sunrise, the ability to breathe easily, and thank Him for these. Make a daily list of what you're grateful for, no matter how small. Gratitude changes your internal posture. It rewires your perspective from a sense of lack to one of abundance. Fear thrives when you focus on what's lacking, but gratitude multiplies peace by increasing your awareness of God's provision, both past and present. Psalm 34 also teaches us the importance of speaking truth over your life. Those who look to Him are radiant. Their faces are never covered with shame. This is a description of transformation. Turning to God doesn't just remove fear. It replaces it with boldness, with confidence. But to make this shift, you must intentionally speak God's promises over yourself. Times of doubt want you to believe lies. You're not enough, or your situation is hopeless. But Scripture tells a different story. Replace those lies with what God's Word says. Declare aloud, "God surrounds me with His angels and delivers me," or "I am never abandoned because He hears me when I cry out." Words have power. When you speak God's truth, you reinforce it in your spirit. You're no longer at the mercy of negative thoughts because you actively combat them with divine promises. Equally important is recognizing the traps of isolation. Life's burdens often try to push us into isolation, convincing us no one else will understand or care. David calls us in the psalm not just to seek God individually, but to magnify the Lord together, to praise in unity. This highlights an essential strategy for freedom. Surround yourself with people who share your faith. Make time for community, whether it's worshiping together, praying together, or simply encouraging one another when circumstances feel heavy. Isolation breeds vulnerability to fear, but fellowship strengthens you by reminding you that deliverance is a shared experience within God's people. You don't have to fight alone. Another often overlooked aspect of breaking free is learning to rest in God's timing. Psalm 34 is rich with promises, but they don't all arrive immediately. Faith involves trusting that even when deliverance doesn't come as quickly as you hope, it is still coming. The traps of life become less effective when you release the need for instant control. Pray, then rest in the knowledge that God is working even when you cannot yet see the results. His timing is perfect, and his delays are no denial. They are often a part of a larger plan unfolding for your good. Rest in that truth instead of striving, and you'll find freedom from the trap of impatience and anxiety. Finally, anchoring your life in Psalm 34 means walking in assurance. When the traps try to pull you back, remember this promise: the angel of the Lord encamps around those who fear him, and he delivers them. Walk through your day with confidence, knowing that divine protection surrounds you. This doesn't mean challenges won't arise, but it does mean those challenges lack the power to define you. Every step you take in this truth makes the traps less effective, less able to pull you back into fear or doubt. This isn't casual advice. This is strategy for a spiritual shift. Psalm 34 isn't meant to merely be read. It's meant to be lived. With praise, seeking, gratitude, the power of words, fellowship, and patience, you'll find yourself breaking free from the traps that once held you tightly. But there's still more. Next, we'll explore real-life stories, testimonials of deliverance and renewal that demonstrate the power of Psalm 34 in action. Stay with me. Hearing how others have experienced this truth will deepen your understanding and inspire your journey even further. Stories of divine rescue and renewal. Sometimes it's easy to read the promises of Psalm 34 and wonder, does this apply to me? Can I truly experience the kind of deliverance and peace that David wrote about? For so many, the verses feel distant, their beauty undeniable, but their impact seemingly out of reach. Yet Psalm 34 isn't just ancient poetry, it's personal. These promises have been lived, felt, and seen in real lives. Hearing how God's deliverance works in others makes all the difference. It bridges the gap between belief and reality. Today, let these stories not only inspire you, but remind you that what David experienced is still possible here and now. Imagine Sarah. For years, Sarah lived in a constant state of anxiety, an invisible weight pressing down on her every waking moment. She wasn't a stranger to faith. She grew up hearing about God's promises, but felt disconnected from them, as though they were reserved for everyone else. Her prayers felt hollow. Her hope vanished as life's disappointments stacked higher and higher. She would wake in the middle of the night, consumed by worst-case scenarios, her mind racing in directions she couldn't control. Isolation became her companion. She believed no one could understand the chaos inside her. Sarah's turning point came not in a dramatic moment, but in the simplicity of encountering Psalm 34. A friend shared the verse, "I sought the Lord, and he answered me. He delivered me from all my fears." Something about the words struck her. Could it truly be this simple? She decided to put it into practice, even if her faith felt small and faint. Her first prayer after reading the psalm wasn't eloquent. It was, "God, if you see me, if this is real, help me." That's all she could muster, and that's all God needed. Over time, she began seeking him daily, reflecting on Psalm 34, even when her mind screamed that it wouldn't make a difference. Slowly, she noticed changes. The fear that once consumed her didn't dissolve overnight, but it no longer held the same power. Instead, moments of peace began breaking through, moments she couldn't explain. She wrote the promises of Psalm 34 on sticky notes and placed them around her home. She would whisper them aloud when intrusive thoughts would return. One night, as she prayed, she described feeling something shift deep inside, a certainty she hadn't known before. For the first time in years, she believed God was right there, surrounding her. What followed was a renewal of her spirit, a slow but steady transformation. Her fears weren't erased, but she now had a shield strong enough to face them. Then there was James. James was someone who appeared to have it all together: a successful career, a loving family, and a reputation for being reliable and strong. But behind closed doors, he carried a burden he couldn't share: the fear of failure. Every achievement felt like it wasn't enough. Every material gain hollow and fleeting. This relentless pressure suffocated him, leaving him to question whether his life was more of a performance than a purpose. When his business faltered, his anxiety spiraled out of control. Sleepless nights and nagging self-doubt became the norm. What struck James wasn't a church sermon or even the psalm itself. It was watching his wife sit at the kitchen table each morning, reading Psalm 34 aloud. At first, he dismissed it as just something she did for herself. But one morning, she paused and asked him to reflect on the verse: "Those who look to him are radiant. Their faces are never covered with shame." For weeks, those words echoed in James's mind. In a moment of frustration, he opened his Bible, desperate for clarity. He read the psalm in its entirety, and a single word lingered: delivered. He wondered what it would be like to feel delivered from his fears, his inner turmoil. Without telling anyone, James began to read Psalm 34 each morning before work. He prayed the words back to God, asking for guidance, thanking him even when the fear didn't yet vanish. What James found wasn't the immediate resolution of his business struggles or the anxiety that gnawed at him. It was an unshakable calm nestled in the storm. He later described it as feeling as though his struggles no longer owned him. His circumstances hadn't fully changed, but he had. He found strength in the knowledge that God encamped around him, providing a protection greater than his uncertainties. And perhaps the most extraordinary story is that of a young girl named Elena. From an early age, she faced health challenges most wouldn't encounter in a lifetime. Endless hospital visits, treatments, and a future that seemed uncertain weighed heavily on her family. But what marked Elena wasn't fear, it was laughter. A peace so steady that nurses often remarked how joyful she seemed despite her situation. When asked why she smiled so much, Elena always had the same answer: Psalm 34, "The angel of the Lord encamps around those who fear him," she repeated again and again. To her young mind, there was no room for doubt. God was with her. She felt it in every prayer, every soft whisper of scripture that her mother read at night. When she heard the promise that those who look to him are radiant, she embraced it fully. "That's why I smile," she said once. "Because I know he's here." Elena's faith became an anchor for her entire family. Her parents, initially weakened by fear, sought the same joy and peace their daughter carried. Daily, they prayed Psalm 34 together, choosing to focus on what God promised rather than what the circumstances threatened. They couldn't explain what happened some nights when Elena would suddenly sleep soundly after restless weeks, or how their worries shifted into moments of inexplicable calm. They described it not as an absence of struggle, but as the presence of peace, grounded in constant reminders of God's goodness. These stories, Sarah's, James's, and Eleanor's, not isolated miracles. They all point back to the timeless truths of Psalm 34. God hears you, God protects you, God delivers you. These promises were real for David, and they remain just as real for you today. The question isn't whether God moves it, whether you're ready to seek Him, to surrender your fears, and to let Him transform your life. But there's still one more step to take. You've read the promises, uncovered the strategies, and seen how others have experienced divine rescue. Now it's time to act. Together, we'll walk into the next chapter and explore how you can personally embrace these truths and make them a daily part of your life. Stay with me, because what's waiting for you isn't just an idea, it's the beginning of a new way to live. Living Psalm 34. Turning promises into daily practice. Psalm 34 isn't meant to be read in passing or treated as a fleeting source of comfort. It's a call to action, a supernatural guide that equips you to live with unshakable confidence, no matter what life throws your way. But how do you take the promises and wisdom of this psalm and translate them into your daily life? How do you move from simply believing in its truths to embodying them, letting them reshape how you think, speak, and act every day? Living Psalm 34 requires more than intention. It calls for practical steps, unwavering commitment, and a heart surrendered to seek and trust God fully. The first key to living Psalm 34 is to establish what I'll call a practice of seeking. Central to this psalm is the repeated act of seeking God in all circumstances. David writes, "I sought the Lord, and He answered me," which highlights something crucial. Seeking isn't passive, it's active, deliberate, and consistent. True seeking doesn't just happen in moments of desperation. It becomes a habit, a way of life. Each day, commit to setting aside uninterrupted time to be in His presence. This isn't complicated. It could look like a quiet moment before the chaos of your morning begins, where you reflect on His goodness and lay down your concerns. It could be as simple as opening Psalm 34 itself, reading it aloud, and meditating on a verse that anchors your heart and mind for the day. But don't stop at reading. Live out the words. When the psalm says, "Taste and see that the Lord is good," take it as an invitation. Begin focusing on the moments in your day when you can clearly see His hand at work, even in small ways. Did someone encourage you with a kind word today? Did the sunrise remind you of His creativity? Did you experience unexplainable peace in a situation that would have normally set off your fears? These are the moments when you're tasting His goodness. Recognize them, thank Him for them, and let them strengthen your faith that God is not distant, He is actively present in your daily life. Another step toward living Psalm 34 is to embrace gratitude as a discipline. In our world, gratitude often feels like something we express only when things are going well, or when we receive something tangible. But the kind of gratitude Psalm 34 calls for is radical. It's thanking God not only for what you have, but for who He is. It's praising Him in the middle of the storm because you trust His faithfulness even when you can't yet see the outcome. I will bless the Lord at all times. His praise shall continually be in my mouth. Those words challenge us to lace our speech with gratitude continually. This isn't just an exercise in positivity. It's a spiritual discipline that counteracts fear and worry. When you choose gratitude, you shift the focus away from what feels uncertain and anchor it in what is unchanging: God's goodness, mercy, and promises. A powerful way to make Psalm 34 part of your daily routine is by using its words as a prayer framework. Instead of simply asking for help when life feels overwhelming, structure your prayers around the truths and declarations found here. Start with gratitude. Lord, I will bless you at all times because you are faithful, even when I can't see the full picture. Then move into trust. I seek you, God. I believe you deliver me from my fears, just as you've promised in your word. Follow this by resting in his protection. I know your angels encamp around me. I trust that you're guarding my heart and mind right now. When your prayers reflect the promises of Scripture, they become an act of agreement with God's will, aligning your spirit with his truth. Another essential element of living Psalm 34 is fostering a community that magnifies God's name with you. David's words, "Magnify the Lord with me, and let us exalt his name together," are a reminder that faith is not meant to be a solitary endeavor. Find people who will seek God with you, who will remind you of his promises during moments of doubt. This could mean joining a prayer group, attending church regularly, or simply surrounding yourself with friends who encourage you in your walk with God. When you're about to fall into the traps of fear or discouragement, these people can help redirect your gaze toward him. They remind you that God's deliverance is not just a theory, it's a reality you can walk in every day. Psalm 34 also invites you to take ownership of your words. Let the humble hear and be glad, the psalm says, urging us to treat our speech as an instrument of praise. Think about how your words shape the atmosphere of your day. Do they reflect fear or faith, complaint or gratitude, hopelessness or joy? Make it a point to speak truth into every situation, whether it's responding to a challenge at work, encouraging someone who's struggling, or even confronting your own doubts. Declare aloud what the psalm promises. Those who look to him are radiant. Their faces are never covered with shame. When you speak God's promises, you reinforce them not only to those around you, but also within your own heart. Words are powerful tools, capable of strengthening your faith and silencing insecurity when used purposefully. Finally, rest in the truth that you're not alone in this journey. Life's traps seem most powerful when we feel like we're facing them on our own. But Psalm 34 reminds us that we are surrounded by divine protection. The angel of the Lord encamps around those who fear him. Let this picture saturate your mind. Spend time visualizing God's angels encircling you, guarding you with divine strength. This isn't a distant, abstract promise, it's a constant reality. Rest in it. When fear tries to creep back into your thoughts, recall this image and remind yourself, I am protected. God is here. Living out Psalm 34 won't happen in one transformative moment. It's a day-by-day process of choosing to anchor yourself in these truths. It involves seeking, gratitude, prayer, fellowship, intentional speech, and spiritual rest. It's not a quick fix, it's a long-term strategy to reshape how you approach life, fear, and faith. And here's the most important truth. These practices aren't about trying harder or performing better. They're about surrendering more deeply into God's care, trusting him enough to let his promises guide every facet of your life. What awaits you on this journey is deliverance, joy, and the radiant confidence of a life anchored in the unshakable promises of God. Everything you've read so far, every truth, every story, every strategy leads to this. The choice to live with freedom, peace, and purpose. So, as you take these truths into your hands, ask yourself one question: are you ready? Because your path forward isn't just set before you, it's already defended and illuminated by the God who rescues. The radiance of a redeemed life, reflecting God's glory. There is a thread running through Psalm 34 that transforms it from simply a song of deliverance into a vision of what your life can become when lived in God's presence. It's the idea of radiance, of being marked by something so supernatural and freeing that it reflects outwards, touching both the world around you and the people who cross your path. Those who look to Him are radiant. Their faces are never covered with shame. Radiance, in this context, is not about physical beauty or worldly success. It's about the unmistakable glow of a heart that has been transformed by God. It's about living a life that reflects His goodness, His mercy, and His faithfulness, so much so that others cannot help but take notice. But what does it mean to live a radiant life? How does this transformation unfold? It begins the moment you turn your gaze toward God. In the noise of life, when fear, doubt, and shame fight for your attention, it's easy to become clouded, so overwhelmed by your struggles that you forget the source of true freedom. Psalm 34 invites you to pause and redirect. When you look to Him, something miraculous happens. God doesn't just meet you in your gaze, He changes you in the process. Fear starts to lose its power. Doubt begins to unravel. And the shame that once made your spirit heavy fades away, leaving behind the unmistakable imprint of God's love. Radiance is a byproduct of trust. It grows in your life as you choose to believe, over and over again, that His promises are truth, that His protection is real, that His deliverance is certain, and that His goodness surrounds you even in the darkest moments. This isn't something you can force or manufacture on your own. Trying harder to appear put together or faithful doesn't create radiance. Instead, true radiance comes naturally, a result of being filled with God's light and truth. Think of how sunlight transforms a room. It doesn't strain to do so. It simply shines. Likewise, when you draw nearer to Him and live in His promises, He shines through you effortlessly. However, radiance isn't just about how you feel. It's also about how you impact others. David's words in the psalm demonstrate this outward effect of a redeemed life. Magnify the Lord with me. Let us exalt His name together. The process of being drawn into God's light isn't meant to end with you. It inspires others to join, to experience the same deliverance and freedom that you've found. A radiant life testifies, not by shouting or striving, but by existing as a beacon of hope. Have you ever met someone whose peace was so unshakable it seemed to calm the room the moment they entered? That's radiance in action, when your life carries God's presence so deeply that it changes the atmosphere wherever you go. But here's where things get personal. Radiance doesn't come without challenges. Look closely at Psalm 34, and you'll see David's honesty about hardship. The righteous person may have many troubles, but the Lord delivers him from them all. The connection between righteousness and trouble is significant. God's presence in your life doesn't mean immunity from trials. In fact, it often means you'll face more resistance because of the light you carry. But your radiance is not dependent on the absence of struggle. It shines brightest because the struggle cannot extinguish it. When others see you navigate trials with peace rather than panic, gratitude rather than bitterness, and trust rather than despair, they see the unmistakable evidence of God's power in your life. What's just as remarkable is how this radiance defeats shame. Shame is one of life's most paralyzing traps, a lie that tells you your mistakes, your failures, and your flaws define you. It convinces you to hide, to avoid being seen, to stay in the shadows. But Psalm 34 boldly declares otherwise. Those who look to Him are radiant. Their faces are never covered with shame. Shame cannot coexist with radiance. God's light doesn't just restore you, it redefines you. When you look to Him, you're no longer the sum of your mistakes. You become the reflection of His forgiveness, His healing, His redemptive power. Shame loses its grip, replaced by a confidence that comes not from who you are, but from who He is. Living a radiant life also involves embracing your role as a vessel of hope. When David speaks of tasting and seeing the goodness of the Lord, it's not just an invitation for himself, it's a call to anyone who hears these words. He's saying, "Come and experience what I've experienced." Radiance attracts others not because you're perfect, but because you're real, because you've faced struggles and found deliverance in them. God works through your story to draw others closer to Him. Your life becomes a living testimony, a story of renewal that proves His promises are more than words on a page. Take a moment to reflect. What areas of your life are still clouded by fear or shame? What would it look like to turn these over to God fully and let His light transform them? Living with radiance doesn't require a grand performance. It starts small, with daily choices to seek Him, to trust Him, and to magnify His role in your life. It grows as you actively step into the truths of Psalm 34, whether that's through declaring His protection over your fears, practicing gratitude amid challenges, or creating space to experience His peace. The radiance of a redeemed life isn't just a personal blessing, it's a glimpse of eternity. Every moment you reflect God's light on this earth, you're participating in something far greater than yourself. You're part of His redemptive plan for your own life, but also for the lives of those around you. The promise of Psalm 34 is this: when you look to God, He doesn't just save you, He makes you radiant. That radiance, free of shame and full of joy, becomes the evidence of His presence in the world. But what comes next is just as important. What does it look like to sustain this radiance daily? To make sure your light continues to shine no matter how heavy life gets? Stay with me, there's more to explore. And the steps forward will ensure your walk continues with confidence and clarity. Together, let's uncover how to hold onto this radiance and let it guide you for the rest of your journey. Sustaining the radiance, walking steadily in God's light. Radiance isn't a momentary glow. It's the lasting evidence of a life transformed by God's presence. But the challenge many of us face isn't in discovering that radiance sits in sustaining it. How do you keep shining when life's pressures mount? When circumstances refuse to change as quickly as you'd hoped? Or when fear and doubt begin to creep back in? Sustaining radiance means learning how to remain anchored in the promises of Psalm 34, even when life feels heavy. It's about steadying your heart, aligning your actions with your faith, and choosing every day to walk in God's unshakable assurance. The first key to sustaining radiance is consistency in seeking God. Psalm 34 makes it clear that deliverance is rooted in this act of seeking. I sought the Lord, and He answered me. Seeking isn't something you do once and forgets a daily pursuit, a rhythm of turning to God in every moment, whether joyful or difficult. Think of it like tending a fire. A fire doesn't burn on its own. It needs fuel and attention to keep glowing. In the same way, your connection to God needs intentionality. Begin each day with prayer and scripture, not as an obligation, but as a way to refocus your heart before the demands of the day take hold. Psalm 34 itself serves as a perfect prayer to repeat often. Declaring these words renews your mind, reminding you of God's power to protect, deliver, and guide you, no matter the circumstances. Another vital aspect is choosing to live with gratitude as a lifestyle, not just a response to good moments. Gratitude is what guards the radiance in your life. Every time you thank God, whether for a major breakthrough or a simple blessing, you are reinforcing the truth of His goodness. Without gratitude, it's easy to let negativity creep in. Doubts gain power when you focus on what hasn't happened yet, but gratitude shifts your attention back to what God has already done. The verse, "Taste and see that the Lord is good," is a reminder that God's goodness isn't just something to reflect on, it's something to actively experience daily. Keep a gratitude journal or simply pause throughout your day to thank Him for what He's doing in your life. Even on hard days, find one thing to be grateful for. It will fuel your radiance and protect your spirit from negativity. Sustaining radiance also requires a long-term perspective. Psalm 34 tells us, "Many are the afflictions of the righteous, but the Lord delivers him out of them all." Notice that deliverance doesn't always happen immediately or in the way we expect. Life may feel heavy, full of challenges that seem never-ending, but God's timing is perfect. The traps that try to ensnare you are never stronger than His protection. Long-term faith means understanding that God's process often includes waiting, but while you wait, your radiance can still shine. Trust that your deliverance is on the way, and that every step you take in faith is a step toward something greater. Focus less on what is unresolved, and more on the steadfast truth that God is always working behind the scenes. One of the most practical ways to sustain your radiance is by surrounding yourself with people who encourage your faith. "Magnify the Lord with me," David writes, "and let us exalt His name together." Faith is not meant to thrive in isolation. When you feel the weight of struggle or doubt pulling at your spirit, a community of believers can help lift you. Their words of encouragement, prayers, and reminders of God's promises can reignite your light when it feels like it's fading. Join a small group of fellow believers, worship regularly with others, and be intentional about sharing your burdens with those who will uplift you. Fellowship keeps your faith strong and reminds you that you're never walking this path alone. Another essential strategy is learning to silence the lies that seek to dull your radiance. Fear and shame will often disguise themselves as reasonable thoughts, whispering things like, "What if this doesn't work out?" or "What if I'm not enough?" These are traps designed to dim the light of God's truth in your life. But Psalm 34 gives us the tools to combat these lies. Those who look to Him are radiant. Their faces are never covered with shame. Speak this truth whenever doubt creeps in. Declare aloud, "I look to God, and I am radiant." Shame has no place in my life because I am redeemed. Choosing to speak God's promises reinforces them in your spirit, making it harder for fear or doubt to take hold. Sustaining radiance also involves living as a vessel of hope for those around you. Radiance isn't just about how you feel. Internally, it's about how your life reflects God's goodness to the world. David's declaration, "Oh, taste and see that the Lord is good," isn't just for His benefit. It's an invitation to others. Your life can be that invitation. When people see your peace in the midst of hardship, your gratitude when things are uncertain, or your unwavering trust in God, they're drawn to the source of your radiance. This outward flow of God's light not only sustains your faith, but it multiplies it, as others are inspired to seek Him through what they see in you. Finally, sustaining radiance requires surrender. There's a paradox to the light we carry. As believers, it shines brightest when we let go of the need to control everything ourselves. Psalm 34 emphasizes this surrender in every verse. "I sought the Lord, I cried to Him, taste and see, fear the Lord." These aren't commands to take matters into your own hands. They're calls to give God your trust, your burdens, your uncertainties. When you try to sustain your radiance by relying on willpower or effort alone, you'll find yourself exhausted. But when you surrender, when you trust that God encamps around you, lifts you, and delivers you, is His light that sustains you, not your own strength. Radiance isn't fleeting. It's an unshakable, enduring gift for those who live with their eyes fixed on God and their hearts anchored in His promises. Psalm 34 gives you a roadmap to sustain it. Seek Him, practice gratitude, trust His timing, stay in community, reject lies, shine outwardly, and surrender daily. These aren't just practices, they're lifelines. When you live this way, the traps of fear, shame, and doubt lose their power, and your light becomes a steady beacon of hope and faith. So the question is no longer, how do I find radiance? It's now, how will I live in it? The decision is yours, but the tools are already in your hands. The promises of Psalm 34 are as true today as they were when David first wrote them. You were created to shine, to reflect God's glory, and to live free from the shadows of fear and defeat. Choose to sustain your radiance and let it guide you through every trial, every season, and every opportunity to make God's goodness known.